And we are live with Michèle A'Court. Hi, Michèle.
Kia ora, how are you?
Hi. I like that. You must watch John Oliver, the Last Week Tonight. I love that.
In his sad, lonely, empty white space.
I love that part of his opening graphics when it does the kind of really serious spin around his body, and then at the end of it, he looks over and he waves like this, like it's very unserious. It's very funny. Hey, thanks.
He's fabulous.
Yeah,
I really
really
enjoyed. I'm sorry, I'm already starting talking. I really enjoyed watching him during lockdown because performing comedy without a live audience is so horrific. But I'm starting to get used to it because of his show.
Right.
You know, the first couple of episodes of him with no live audience it felt really clunky and awkward, and I kept imagining what it would be like with a live audience. But now, a few weeks later, I'm watching it and going, "Oh no, this is fine. I can handle this."
Well, just on the comedy thing, I saw on your Facebook page, I think you guys had a set last week, like on the 22nd. Was there some performing going on at the comedy?
Yeah, the club opened again on Friday night, and I was on Saturday night. So Scott Blanks, who owns the Classic, did a really good job before lockdown of rejigging the club for social distancing. So instead of seating 120, it now seats 70. Tables are 2 meters apart from each other. People are seated in groups of people they know. No more, here, you two spare people come and sit with these two spare
bubble
people.
tables.
Yeah. So totally possible to run the club. So it was amazing, actually. I did the second to last gig before lockdown at the Classic, and that felt great, but also scary. You didn't know if you were doing the right thing or the wrong thing. At that point, being in a room full of people, that was the Friday night before we went into lockdown level 4 on Wednesday, the following Wednesday night.
Right.
Yeah, so it felt like a last hurrah, and it felt great. It felt a bit fucking dodgy, much. Sorry, I shouldn't say. Felt dodgy, all of those things. Anyway, so this was the second night that the club was open on the other side of all of this, and it was like stepping out of a fog. And yeah, I suddenly felt my brain my brain feels like it's been in paralysis for about 8 weeks, and it was like defrosting or something. And the room was so full of this beautiful energy of people who were brave enough. You know, a lot of people are still really anxious about leaving the house and being in contact with other humans. So obviously you're getting people coming to the club who are less anxious about that kind of thing.
Which must mean it's a good. Must mean it's a good crew. Then it's a good audience if they're the ones that are really keen to get out. They'd be the ones that are. Yeah.
No, there were a couple of times where they were laughing at lines where I was thinking, that doesn't deserve that kind of laugh. You're exaggerating.
When you said defrosting, it makes complete sense as the kind of de-thawing, de-icing. But all I could think was licking the icing off a cake. That would be defrosting as well. That was what I
like that too.
Jumped into my mind. I mean, like, obviously coronavirus is going to come up in this conversation, and it's been all the way because I've been really busy. I've probably done 25 podcasts during lockdown because we can do this and everyone's home. So it's I've always been kind of touch wood. And I was kind of going, coming out of level 4, I'd rather stay in for a little bit longer to make sure than come out too early. But it seems to have, touch wood, worked or be working. Because when we came out of level 4, I was like, I'm nervous. I wait 2 weeks and that'll be the incubation period for level 3. And at the end of level 3, we're kind of like, oh. And then like, well, level 2, I'm nervous. Let's wait for a couple of weeks because there's the incubation period again. And now yesterday, one active case in the country. I assume that's actually accurate because I was talking to a mate last night and I was like, there could be the incubators or there could be the people who are asymptomatic. But then I thought, hang on, but if they were in the country, they'd be infecting other people. So the numbers would be going up again and it hasn't. And I'm just like, wow. oh, is this really going to happen? I'm in, my fog is kind of going, it feels a bit like a movie script. And so in my movie script, as with any Hollywood movie, in about a week's time, actually the zombie apocalypse is coming and taken over because we got so close, but we never quite made it. So it's a really weird feeling.
Yeah, it is a weird feeling. I do feel like, I mean, I know there are a lot of commentators saying, get to level 1 now. And I'm still on the side of, I'm usually quite a risk-takey kind of person, but I'm still on the side of, no, let's unlock this really slowly. Let's reduce any chance that we might go back to level 4, because I think that would be really difficult to enforce and really damaging to people's psyches as well as the economy. So the idea of coming out of this as slowly as we can with as good a plan as we can still appeals to me. Yeah. I've discovered I'm quite compliant.
Yeah, me too, actually. I mean, because it was like, we had David Clark down here, bless his cotton socks, go out to the beach, you know, the whole minister of health breaking the rules. And I was saying to like friends and family and my kids, I'm like, you know what, David Clark going to the beach is it's not risky at all, actually. It's going to do nothing. But the problem is, if everyone went to the beach, that's when it happened. So I've been kind of like during lockdown, my kids stayed with their mum for the full 4 weeks. And I'm like, but we're neighbours, so it's easy. So I was sitting in the driveway, still hanging out with my kids. So I was kind of going, you know, parents and kids going backwards and forwards is pretty much fine and it's safe and you're allowed to do it. But if everyone did it, there's more of a chance of transmission. So for those 4 weeks, I, like you, was very compliant. And I was working at ZB, I think, whatever it was, 2010, if that was H1N1, SARS, bird flu, whichever one it was. And I remember doing a Sunday night show, not taking the piss out of it, but kind of going, look, these headlines on CNN, you know, world could be, and I was like, I think they're exaggerating. But this has felt different. This has felt like they're not exaggerating. For me, at least. Maybe it's maybe because I'm getting older. It felt a bit different, and it was a bit scarier. And so I was very compliant as well, and perfectly happy to stay in that not heavy-handed, but in that more strict conditions for longer if necessary.
And God, doesn't it feel like it's paid off? Already I'm starting to read international news stories and having to remind myself that they're all still in lockdown. They're still in the really heavy, tight lockdown that we have moved away from. And they're in a different world from us. Yeah. Already that, you know, I'm looking at stuff on the news and stuff that I'm reading and going, oh, yeah, you guys are still staying in place. You're still at home. So we've done a remarkable job. So aside from the 22 families so appallingly affected by those 22 deaths, we have, as a nation, dodged a bullet in an extraordinary way.
And I just kind of feel, for me, it feels a little bit like even opening the border with Australia. If you look at Australia's numbers, they're actually comparable. I think they had 100 deaths. We had 20 deaths. So and they're 5 times our size. So they're actually kind of done as well as we have. But I still kind of go, it's a bit like during that hard breakdown period, or lockdown period, I should say, as I went, it'd probably be okay, but I'd rather err on the side of caution. And I think for this, if we could, it's even hard. Honestly, I find it hard to say because I sort of want to believe it, but don't want to jinx it. You know how sports fans think that they can affect the outcome of the sporting game by the kind of undies they wear or where they sit in the stand? Sort of feels like that. I don't want to be the reason it fails by jinxing it. But if it is possible to get there, 0 cases, I'm like, okay, it's like that old the joke in the 80s, you know, the last one out of New Zealand turned the lights off. It's like, we'll just lock up the borders and we'll just stay like this for the next 12 months and you know, do things like tour around New Zealand. And I saw a friend.
Oh, sorry. No, you carry on.
I just know I saw a friend of mine had gone down to Taranaki this weekend from Auckland, doing that sort of thing. You know, time to get out and see the place and spending the weekend in Taranaki and having some fun.
Yeah, we're kind of lucky because we've been touring for the last 30 or 40 years that there is nowhere in New Zealand I haven't been to yet. I can highly recommend Reefton. Go do that. So, you know, I hear people going, we're going to go to the west coast of the South Island. Is there another west coast? I don't think so. For the first time. And I'm like, oh, good. Enjoy. It's fantastic. Don't forget to go visit the graveyard in Hokitika. It's amazing.
Yeah.
What I'm hoping for is Rarotonga, the Cook Islands, have had no cases of COVID at all, ever. So I'm hoping that there'll be a pathway from New Zealand to Rarotonga. They need us. They need us to go and spend some New Zealand dollars in their economy. And it's one of my favourite places. So I'd be happy with that. Australia can get in the far queue for a wee while. But they're still having massive flare-ups in odd places that they can't trace. So nah, not so much.
And that's what we saw. Well, it might have been Singapore, but one or two of those countries in the Asian region that got onto it really quickly when they opened up. They had some flare-ups, and it seems that, again, gosh, it sounds really weird. I feel like I feel like the cowardly lion. I just don't want to jinx it, but it feels like we've got so far down the track. We're almost at a stage that you can't have a flare-up. I mean, if there is only one active case, that means from now on, if that's accurate, the only cases we're going to have are going to be coming off planes, if any, and they're all going to be in lockdown for 2 weeks, and that makes it feel like, hey, New Zealand, we're back.
Yeah. And I know long term that means that we might have to keep our borders closed for a really long time.
Yeah.
And people are going, wow, herd immunity. We still don't know if after having this virus, you do have immunity for any reasonable period of time. So, yeah, I think we sit tight and learn to do some things differently, which would be great.
I'll see if I can show you this. I saw a graphic on New York Times. Yeah, I have. Let me bring this up. Check this out. This is from the New York Times, right?
Yeah.
And this one on the left-hand side, everyone can see this. So you and me are seeing all this and everyone's seeing it with us. This graphic on the left-hand side says at least 60% of the population needs to have it to be herd immunity. And then they show what New York is, what London is, what Madrid is, what Wuhan is, what Boston is, what Stockholm is, which is a place looking for herd immunity, and what Barcelona is. So this is what we need. And even the places that have been really badly affected, this is what they've got. So it feels like what they're kind of saying is herd immunity. Well, they're not saying this, but what I'm drawing from it might be a bit of a pipe dream, actually, because those places that have got it really badly are nowhere near, the numbers they need to have herd immunity anyway.
Yeah, and my God, the price is so high. The price is just so high, right?
Well, that was the thing that was it Sweden that didn't lock down properly, and so they've lost kind of 20 times what their neighbours have, and it was just released last week that basically their GDP's been affected in exactly the same way. So basically a ton of people died, and they didn't do what people like Trump are saying we should be doing by opening up and keeping the economy going. The economy still basically crashed, and they lost a shit ton more of their elderly people. Didn't seem like a good result to me.
No, not so much. And the psychological fallout of that number of deaths is also massive, in terms of anxiety and depression and all the other grief-related things. Yeah. And that affects the economy as well. So, no, I think we've done really well. I'm very pleased to be in this country right now.
Yeah, I am getting a little bit sick of the knockers, and only because, and I've used this example about 5 times during this podcast, so people listening or watching will be sick of it. But the perspective I've had is kind of thinking of us having 2 columns. There's the good choices column and there's the bad choices column. So acknowledging that there's no perfect outcome, we take as many decisions from the good choices column and as few from the bad choices column, acknowledging that we are going to take some. And I'm like, I feel like that's what we've done. And acknowledging it can't be perfect. Knockers, you can just kind of shut the fuck up and let us get back to some kind of normality, please.
Yeah, totally. And I appreciate that it's columnists need to be devil's advocates, and we need to, as the fourth estate, hold the government to account and but also shut up. We're doing great. They can't go out for dinner in Australia, and we're allowed to. So,
but you also read the room, and I mean that's what Bridges didn't do well with that infamous post. He didn't read the room well, and his own supporters told him that. And this would seem to me to be one of those times. And again, I've said this before. I remember Don Brash saying that the only party he couldn't work with was Labour, and I thought as a voter, I'm like, that's pretty fucked, because actually I want the best possible outcome for my country and my politicians. So if there was a way that you could work with them, even if they're opposition, then you should. And this would seem to be the time that a healthy democracy needs a good opposition to hold the government's feet to the fire. Completely accept that, but this seems to be the time that the best use of the opposition would have been kind of supporting the government and working together, rather than thinking, 4 months away there's an election, we better get our talking points in.
Yeah. And I guess what surprised me in this last week with Muller is that I had always imagined that if you're in opposition, every time the government does a thing, you would think, what would I do if that were me?
Yeah.
What would my plan be? And they don't seem to have been doing that. I don't know what they've been doing. I guess they've been so busy rolling bridges that they haven't been able to respond to anything. Like presenting an alternative budget, presenting an alternative to, there's almost nothing there. So that Muller has spent all week either justifying his appalling top 12 or talking about his souvenir hat. Somebody who's supposed to be really into American politics, passionate, fascinated by American politics, and doesn't understand the symbolism of a red MAGA hat beyond me. But certainly no plan at all. Nothing, we'll tell you about that later. No, tell us about it now, mate. I don't know why you decided that you would be a terrific leader without actually, show your workings.
Gosh, how much do I remember that from school? Someone who loves someone who loves maths and what's 8 out of 10 cats does countdowns and does all the sums in my head, constantly being told by teachers to show my workings. And look, he's putting himself forward as the alternative, the better choice from his perspective. But like you say, the thing Jacinda did well when she became leader is, in the first press conference she had, they actually asked her questions and she said, I don't know, but she said, give me 72 hours and I'll have all those answers for you. She goes, look, the truth is I'm just in the seat, give me 72 hours and I'll give you all those answers. And I think basically she did, but whereas it seems that maybe there's not even that plan. I mean, the Jack Tame situation where he was asked how much would you spend and there was no answer, that was a tad more than awkward, because that's the obvious suggestion. That's the obvious suggestion on question always, is if you say that they're not spending enough, how much would you spend? If they're spending too much, how much would you spend? It's an obvious question to ask. And like, if it's too much, what would you be cutting? If it's not enough, where would you be adding funds? There's a logical conclusion to that questioning. And to not even be able to come up with something there was a bit sad for him. But I guess we'll see.
He's about the same age as me. Somebody on Twitter said yesterday that the National Party wants you to vote for Daddy. Like he's this kind of patriarchal, safe hands,
right?
The dude you can trust. But to me, he looks like the kind of old dinosaur that a bunch of my friends divorced 15 years ago. So he's got almost no appeal for me. And there's just something very uncomfortable about I don't know, that first press conference with Amy Adams and Nikki Kay on either side, and then a bunch of women, Judith Collins. It was so handmaiden-y.
Right.
I don't know. It's trotting out. Here are the ladies who will be silent.
Yeah.
And here's the man doing all the talking.
Yeah, look, I've been watching that Jeffrey. Now, I'll make this clear. I'm not equating Jeffrey Epstein to any other person, but I happen to be watching that Jeffrey Epstein documentary that's just come up on Netflix. Terrifying documentary. But one of the things I noticed, and maybe it was because I was in that mindset of, obviously there's a fair bit about the Me Too movement and stuff in that documentary. And it's funny how you would say that, because I was thinking there's a moment where there are 3 people in a room and they're lawyers, and there was a good result that came in for them for the victims of Epstein. and the older lawyer who was 60, obviously a fantastic man because he's fighting for these victims, but they get a good decision made that way. He tells the two people, the woman comes over to him and he puts her arms around her and he gives her a kiss on the cheek like a congratulatory thing, and he just kind of went to the guy, and I'm just like, well, it's a funny dynamic when kind of men take that position of, you know, touch, hold, feel, kiss, female, quiet, background, whatever, male, not. Yeah. So I'll make it clear, I'm not comparing anyone to Epstein, but that moment in that documentary, it reminds me of what you've just said about the handmaiden standing in the background.
Yeah, no, it makes my skin automatically crawl when I see that kind of shush ladies. And somebody else made the point that I think we all absorbed at some subconscious level, that all the male politicians bring in their wives as examples of support, and he's a good man and, you know, decent and all of those things. The women never have a partner standing beside them. Very rarely have a partner standing beside them. And if they do, you know, if our Prime Minister's partner and kid turn up a photo shoot, you know, people go crazy. So I don't know. There's a lot to unpack in all of that, really. I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting though. I've got a request in with Todd Muller's office to obviously do a podcast because it's big news at the moment. And I suspect they won't see this, but if they did, one of the things I was going to ask Simon Bridges, and I will also ask him, is no matter the quality of this individual as a politician or potential prime minister, I wonder if it's a bit of a Frano Bodica moment, or a Aaron Cruden moment. You know, there's these fantastic first fives that would be first fives on any other international team in the world, but they just happen to have Grant Fox and Dan Carter in front of them. So they never actually got to that post. And I wonder at the moment with the polls if Jacinda is in that kind of Dan Carter, Grant Fox situation. And no matter who comes up against them, whether they're amazing or not, there's just not a chance this election coming around. I know it is a week's a long time in politics, but it just seems to be a cakewalk, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, sports metaphors are not all that good for me, but I know what you're talking about. But also, why would you say no to an extraordinary woman and replace her with a mediocre man? Why would anybody do that? I mean, she is remarkable. We have not seen the like of her, not just in this country, but in leadership in the world currently and for a long time. Why would you ever say no to an extraordinary woman and replace her with a meh guy?
Well, for me, it's not even about the meh guy, because I actually don't know too much about Todd Muller at all. He might be an amazing human being, but you've got a prime minister at the moment who has had a baby during her first term, which I think is the most amazing thing. Had a natural disaster, had a massacre, and had a pandemic. You know, and has come out as one of the highest rated. I think there's a little bit of conjecture over some of the headlines. I was listening to Media Watch last weekend on RNZ. There's a little bit of conjecture over, is she indeed the most highest profile? Because it depends on what poll you look at. But whichever way, it seems to me that at the moment, 4 months out, acknowledging it's a long way, the only question that people are really asking at the moment is, will they break 50% or not? And that seems to be the driving question as to going into the election. And I'm someone who obviously is on the left side of politics. I don't particularly have a party per se. Like, I'm not a Labour supporter or a Green supporter. I, weigh it up and look around, and I can vote centrist as well. But there's a part of me which just would love to see this as a sociological experiment, to see what MMP would look like with our party having a majority, which we've never seen. Would it be a good experiment for the country? Would it be bad? I'm interested into how that would pan out.
Sure. Yeah. What I'm most interested in is having I would love a Labour Green coalition without New Zealand First.
Right.
And I know that there are a lot of people who think that New Zealand First is a useful handbrake on this government, and I believe the opposite. Like, I think this is a moment where we could make some massive changes. And I feel like the stuff that hasn't been delivered by this government in terms of dealing with poverty and the distribution of wealth, you know, the capital gains tax, the inability to get the housing stuff off the ground. There's a whole lot of stuff, the clean water stuff that has just come through this week. There's a whole lot of stuff that would have gone further without New Zealand First putting the handbrake on. And I appreciate that not everybody feels like I do, but I would like some radical change going on in the country right now. I feel like this is a time when, because of COVID-19, the whole structure, we've learned that all the structures are really fragile. I mean, I'm stunned at how many businesses couldn't survive 4 weeks of no business. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Anyway, so we've discovered that the structures, the systems are very fragile. We've got an opportunity to redesign, to rejig, to make some brave choices about what we income inequality and gender inequality and racism, and we, you know, it's like everything is in a state of flux, and we can rebuild the way that we want to. So let's go wild. Let's go. I would love that. And I think you can't do that with New Zealand First, because they will constantly be the handbrake on major radical change.
The term handbrake is often used probably as a positive sometimes in politics. It sounds like what you're saying is more anchor than handbrake.
Yeah. Well, I just think they have stopped this government doing some of the things that it dearly wanted to do.
Right.
And yeah, so without that, yahoo.
I think I've always believed, and I think the research and stats back it up, is that most Western countries are left-wing anyway. If you actually asked every person in the country based on the policy what they would back, I mean, it's easy to look at America. Since 1994, the right has only won the popular vote once. You know, so it's a left-wing country, and I think that the right are more organised and are better at playing and doing politics. And I don't mean playing like they're playing games, like just following the rules and getting together. And the left is typically where you have the vote being suppressed. And I'm not saying actively voter suppression, but not as actively involved, don't care as much. You might say lazier on some levels. And if everyone did vote and everyone could vote, then I think most countries would be left-wing. So to have a government that could actually be a genuine left-wing government, yeah, I guess for me, I don't think it's going to impact me that much personally one way or the other. And whilst acknowledging I do sit on the left, I think that would be it. It would be an interesting dynamic to see how that would pan out for the country.
Yeah, I found it really interesting. There was a sort of eyes wide open moment for me when I spend too much time on Twitter, and the right I find quite noisy there. I mean, the left is noisy too, but I was stunned when that poll came out that said that 92% of New Zealanders thought that the government had handled COVID-19 the right way.
Yeah.
92%, bloody hell. And I had just spent days just reading about what a terrible, how the government had mishandled it, and we'd either locked down too soon or too late, or too hard or too soft, or we need to be out now. Blah. 92%. That's incredible. So yeah, I think that gives you some political capital that you could spend by making some tough calls and major changes, the ones that we need to deal with climate change and inequality.
It seems that often happens with the the commentary world. It's either the 5% on the far left or the 5% on the far right. That is where you get most of the commentary from. I mean, look at people. I saw some absolute twat talking the other day about the New Zealand left-wing mainstream media, and someone went, Mike Hosking, Sean Plunkett, Mark Richardson, Duncan Garner, just went through them all and said, and then they went, John Campbell, and like, okay, so one maybe, but even that, is that more kind of corporate capitalist than left-wing when it comes down to it? So it's just, it seems that it's a nonsense kind of idea in New Zealand that we have if there is a bias, perhaps it's to the other side from the loudest voices, and the loudest voices don't tend to be representative of maybe let's say 90%, let's say the middle 70 to 80% of the country. And I mean, different people have different feelings about Chappelle. But it's that, for me, it kind of reminds me of that Chappelle situation where there were a lot of people reviewing his comedy, saying how terrible it is and it's awful and this is such 1950s comedy and stuff. And they go to Rotten Tomatoes and there's a 0 score from the credits and a 99% score from the audience. And then he wins the Grammy 3 years in a row. And I'm like, those people who are making, even if you agree or disagree with his content, they're not assessing the community around that's actually taking on board that content because they're loving it. And it's about the same. I mean, the country loved what the government did. The commentators are like, you know, what about my tax breaks or whatever they've been saying.
I know. Yeah, and if you stick Tova O'Brien into your search on Twitter, you will get equal numbers of she's a Labour Party shill and she's a right-wing demon, you know, and that's actually, as a journalist, probably exactly what you want, because it means that you're doing your job and holding power to account, and you're pissing off the extremes at both ends. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. And
that's what I used to get on ZB all the time when I was working as a talkback host. One night I'd be a mouthpiece of Helen Clark, and the next night I'd be, you know, a right-wing nutter. And it's like when you hear those people, you know, the whole term Nazi is thrown around a lot, who get called, a Jewish Zionist in the morning, and in the afternoon they get called a Nazi in the same day. And it's like, they just don't mean anything. Anyway, it's ludicrous.
It's all mad. The whole thing's mad. I'm having a glass of soda water.
Not quite as mad as Dunedin's new slogan, though. Have you seen this?
Pretty good plan D.
So,
what were plans A, B, and C?
Let me just say, though, if I play this little video, right, you can see that.
Okay.
It's actually a very good idea, because what they're saying is, you know, there's everything in Dunedin that you'll find anywhere in the world. So one of the examples for people who are listening is they're talking about going to Egypt. That were built where pyramids were built 4,000 years ago, and there's a picture of a man standing on top of a triangular shaped mountain saying our pyramids were much older than that, meaning come and see our landscape. You know, you don't have to see the pyramids, come and see our landscape. It's better than that sort of thing.
But it's still saying you really want to do this, you can't.
Yeah.
So come and do this.
So
I don't think that's a good sell.
So check this out, right? This was me this morning. I dropped one of my kids off to Port Chalmers. You tell me, you can see this photo, Michelle, others who can't. Yeah. I took some photos on the side of the road. Oh, come on, now work for me. We'll just go that one then. Does that look like a plan D to you?
No, that looks like a plan A.
Does that look like a plan? For people who are listening, we're looking over the harbour from up above Port Chalmers. And I saw this morning and it incensed me. So I actually stopped the car. This is literally today. So that's today in Dunedin. It incensed me that I have to go and say to people, yeah, hear the birds in the background. This is what people are saying. Here's your plan D. And I'm like, fuck off.
Yeah.
Because
it's a plan A.
Exactly as you say, what they're saying to people is, there's at least 3 places better than us, but, you know, throw me a bone. This is a bit like what you want. It's not what you want. It's a bit like what you want. Have that. Nah. I think where they've missed the mark is, and I used to say this to international visitors when I lived in Auckland, it was like, you know, a 4-hour drive from here, meaning Auckland, you can pretty much see or do anything that you can see or do anywhere in the world. Whether it's, you know, a desert or a rainforest or surfing or skiing or deep sea fishing or trout fishing, you know, all these things, that's all real close. And I think that's what they've been trying to achieve. But all I got to say is the whole Plan D thing and people are saying, oh, there's been a mixed reaction. Yeah, there's been the people who did it saying this is their idea, and there's been everyone else saying it's fucking the most ridiculous thing we've ever heard.
I think the mix of reactions was that's shit and that's fucking shit. So that's pretty much how that works.
But I was I had Martima Davidson on a couple of weeks ago, and this is what we were talking about. Actually, we were saying once we're able to, my thing was for Air New Zealand. I had the slogan for Air New Zealand, which was, can't do Queensland, do Queenstown. Can't do Whakatane, do France. Oh no, can't do France, do Whakatane. Can't do I don't know, Wigan, do Wellington. And it's sort of what we're now doing. Like I said, a mate of mine is up down in Taranaki this weekend from Auckland, and 2 weekends time I'm going up to Naseby with my kids. Spend a couple of days up there. Going to do the dark sky tour because I want to go and see the stars with no light pollution.
Yes.
Thinking about going to the West Coast for a week in the holidays because you can get a camper van for $29 a day at the moment if you get the right price, sort of thing, which is far cheaper than a motel or an Airbnb or anything. So why not?
Do it.
Yeah. So I think it's like we've talked about school today already and show your workings. You used to have 2 columns. There was like effort and there was attainment, sort of thing. I think the effort is an A, but I think the actual mark, the score, is certainly, they can have the D. That's actually where the D should be for the people who have planned this sort of thing, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I reckon for tourism, there are 2 things that appeal to me as a way of getting people out into the country, and one is to people should be going to look for their whakapapa. Like my whānau arrived in New Zealand in the 19th century? Ooh, 1852. Zachariah A'Court arrived from Somerset to Melbourne to
we're actually just losing you a bit there, mate.
The connection should be fine. Are we right now?
Yeah, we're back now.
My internet connection is unstable.
Oh, dear.
Okay.
As long as the internet connection and not the life in general.
No, not life in general. No, it should be fine. Here we go. How's that? Anyway, go search where your family first arrived in New Zealand if you're Pākehā.
Yep.
Go and work out. Are you frozen now? Are we all good? Like South Island.
I'm here.
Just going from one cheese roll to the next.
Yeah, it's. I think that discovery is a good thing. I was talking to my sister the other day, and maybe it's more our generation than this generation, but everyone would leave school, do university, then head off to the UK and do the working holiday. Yep. And there was that classic comment about, someone would come back and be 30 and back in New Zealand, and they'd kiss the Blarney Stone, and they'd seen, St. Peter's Cathedral, and they'd been to the south of France, but they'd never seen the South Island, And what you find in the South Island is people go, I've never been to Auckland, and it's quite a big number. So, yeah, this is the time. And hopefully not only will places like Maui campers and, various groups and that be dropping their prices, but also Air New Zealand. I'm not sure about the prices there, but this would be the time to have, I talked to Marama about a break-even economy. Break even, don't lose money, but break even and allow people to get around the country and go to places they haven't been before.
Yeah, and that might do something really nice for our interpersonal relations, because we find all the time touring that you're in, I don't know, I don't want to be rude about Westport, but you're chatting to somebody after a gig and they go, so where are you from? And you go, Auckland. And they go, oh, I'm sorry. And you go, did you not enjoy Auckland? And they go, oh, I've never been there, but Daryl went and he said it was shit. So it would be really cool if people from wherever spent some time in Auckland. When people say, why do you live in Auckland and why do you like it? It's because I live on the edge of a bush reserve surrounded by tui and kereru, and I have 3 beaches that I love to go to in easy distance from my house, and I love the climate. It's so a lot of people they think of Auckland as terrible traffic.
Yep.
And wankers and Ponsonby, and we have both of those.
Yeah.
But we have other stuff too. So yeah.
I'm back in Auckland 3 or 4 times a year, probably. I still really like it. I mean, I'm the kind of person, you get people who leave. It's like an ex-smoker. The worst person to talk to about smoking is an ex-smoker because they're, worst person to talk to about Auckland is someone who's left Auckland and how, because all they'll say is how terrible it was. I still like Auckland. I still enjoy it. I've said several times I could imagine going back if there was a reason to. I don't want to go back, but I wouldn't be one of those people that I'd never go back, sort of thing. Because we lived out the Waitaks when we were last there as well. When we looked over the Manukau Harbour, and it's beautiful. And I guess I was lucky that I either work from home and doing this kind of, up there when I was doing more radio, you work silly hours, so you're never in the rush hour traffic, and maybe that's a luxury. But yeah, no, I do actually, and I think that actually getting people to Auckland would be a great thing. I mean, people who have never been, it's a great time to go. It's a great time to get out there. It's a beautiful city, It's lovely down around the viaduct and see some sights, and much like you can't see snow, snow-tipped hills. I can't think of the word. Mountains with snow in Auckland, so you need to travel for that. You also can't snow-capped. There you go. You also can't see, I don't know, the industry and the Sky Tower and the museum in Auckland from Christchurch. So go to Auckland and see that. You got to travel to see these things you can't see in your neck of the woods. So yeah, very much.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to go to Auckland. Swing by, have a cup of tea.
I just think that if we're going to talk about this, that actually it could very easily turn into Auckland being left off the list, though. It could turn into everyone leaving Auckland to see the rest of the country, but it's perfectly valid to say the rest of the country should go check out Auckland as well. And Wellington. I love Wellington. I feel like Dunedin is like a slightly colder, far less windy, smaller version of Wellington. And that's one of the things I like about Dunedin, because I love Wellington's probably... When we were moving, it was either going to probably be Wellington or Dunedin, because they felt the same, two sort of places. So I love it. People should travel and see the place. The trip, go through the Beehive. The Beehive is an amazing building. Go and check out some of the sites you haven't seen before.
Yeah, and Te Papa is amazing. And yeah, I love Wellington. I lived there for 12 years on and off.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Hey, I was going to talk to you as well about the comedy and stuff. The comedy and stuff.
The thing I like about Wellington and... No, you carry on.
Yeah, I think the connection's a little bit iffy at times sometimes. So I was going to talk to you about the comedy you're doing, and I don't know if you've heard of this adventurer in America. Do you know the comedian Bert Kreischer? He's got a couple of Netflix specials at the moment, Bert Kreischer, and what he's decided to do is he's doing, let me bring it up on the screen here for you, he's doing a drive-in comedy tour. So he's got around the social distancing by going to a whole bunch of locations that have drive-in theatres, and he's doing a drive-in comedy tour. And then, of course, your bubbles in your car, it won't be the same immediacy reaction backwards and forwards with someone, 6 feet away from you at a table. But I thought that's pretty ingenious, and what a clever way of getting around the problem of social distancing at the moment, to have a stand-up routine at a drive-through.
Yeah, that's a great idea. A lot of comedians like to not be able to see the audience,
right?
And really enjoy working in, for example, a theatre setting where there's no house light at all and you're just talking to black.
Okay.
I cannot fucking stand it. And I need to be able to see somebody's face. And it doesn't have to be like, first 2 rows, a little bit of house light, please, just so that I can see some faces, because otherwise I feel like I am painting in the dark. And not every comedian feels like I do, but I cannot bear not being able to see them. It feels like making television, and even when you're making television, my goal is to see the camera operator's shoulders bounce up and down from laughter.
Right.
I just need to be able to read how it's going. But maybe a drive-in is a good idea. Maybe if you can have some kind of, I would need a microphone somewhere picking up the audience response. I would, it's otherwise I just, the vision in my head is of coyote. Was it the coyote chasing the
Wile E. Coyote?
Roadrunner? Who? It was the coyote that used to run off the cliff, and his legs would go like that for a little while until he realized that there was no ground under him and dropped.
Yeah.
That's how I feel when I'm doing comedy too. No faces and no sound.
Maybe what they have to do is, it's in America obviously, is all the pickup trucks and the convertibles have to be in the front row. Maybe that's the easy way to do it, because then at least you've got connection with people. People can get in their pickup trucks with their seats in the tray, watching it from there.
Yeah, and it's not just about, that's not about me being insecure that I don't know if my gear's funny or not. It's that I think that the beauty of stand-up is that it's a conversation between you and the audience.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take them away, then I'm not having a conversation, I'm delivering a theatrical monologue, and I would rather chew tin foil.
I'm interested, and I've told this story to Jeremy, actually, your lovely other half. I don't know if he ever told you this, but you talked a bit about TV and doing TV in there, and I can remember a really specific incident with you in television, from 1987.
Yeah.
Because I remember it was the final of the Rugby World Cup, and you were on What Now in a French jersey, and you went, and I actually can't remember who your co-host was at that moment, but I can remember you being in the French jersey, and either you or he was like, "Hey, A'Court, of course, I get it makes sense." It's always, I don't know why, but that's always stuck with me, that I've remembered that moment. Did you?
Yeah, it was 87 was Frank Flash and Danny Watson, and I think Frank found it amusing and Danny was appalled, and nobody thought it was a good idea apart from me. But yeah, my ancestry is French, so it was just a little bit of that as well. There's there's so much all black stuff that I just wanted to go, there's another team.
Yeah.
And it's, you don't have to, it's like, yeah, I felt like the country was bullying everybody, and I just thought I might stick up for the other guys. Didn't necessarily, there was no, we didn't have email then, or Twitter, or any of those things, but I believe I got some letters.
some calls to the front desk.
Some people put some stamps on envelopes.
Some notes in the.
Happy about that. God, I'd forgotten that.
Some notes in the logbook at TVNZ at the front desk. If you're watching this and you've had a bit of a very short finish to that episode, it's because we had a technical issue. We apologise about that. Thank you for joining us. So head to the Facebook page, facebook.com/DOCNZ, and find out who's coming up for our 100th episode, which will be in the first half of the upcoming week. Bless you all. Have a great time, and we'll catch you next time then, team. Hooroo. Ciao.